What up, YouTube? This is Insane Monster doing part 2 of What If Asta Was Trained by Zoro. Now then, when we last left off, Asta just got his new anti-magic sword, and him and Yuna were being scolded by their teacher Zoro. So let's get back to it, but first, hit it. Alright, now then we get to where they're beginning their training for the Magic Knight exam. Before that, Zoro requests both of them to come see. They do so, and Zoro talks to them and explains this. Alright, you two, listen. We're going to be practicing the final stage of haki training, called Ryu. Asta looks confused, so does Yuno. So Zoro just tells them basically it's a form of armament haki that is emitted instead of just used to cover your fist or weapon. Understand? Asta just raises his hand saying, no, I do not. Yuno just kind of shrugs. So Zoro just scratches his head and he tells them to follow him, which once they come across an animal, happening to be a bear, instead of using his sword, Zoro just clenches his fist, goes right up to the bear, and what they see is this energy glowing around his fist as he strikes the bear. They've seen their master strike something like a bear before, and it was sent flying from the sheer strength, but this time it wasn't. The bear just froze for a second and blew chunks, passing out. When they went to go check it, it turned out it was dead. Asta just looked at Zoro yelling, "The hell did you do?" Zoro looked at them saying it was Ryu. It's like adding more power into a hit with less movement, in a way, or at least in some cases. Using this can also increase the range of your haki beyond your hands or the weapon you use to coat them with haki. Understand? You can already make wind pressure attacks like that, but if you focus using Ryu, then you are able to send a distance attack of haki. So they think about it for a moment, and Yuno replies with, "So it's like whenever I fire magic energy out. Since haki is part of me, so is my magic, it's kind of like that, just shooting an energy you have outwards." Zoro just says, "Well, if that's how you understand it, then good for you." As he continues explaining it, flowing the haki within their bodies to the part that they're using. Once they get told that, Zoro asks to see Asta's new sword. He pulls out the Demon Slayer sword and gives it to Zoro. Since Zoro doesn't have any magic, he's okay holding it. As he explained, not exactly a black sword like mine's, but it will do. Asta then obviously raises up his hands and asks, "What do you mean black by black swords? I mean, yeah, these swords were made this way, right?" Zoro looks at him and says, "No, not exactly." Now this is a theory, and what seems to be leading to in the One Piece anime, so sorry if I get this wrong based off of what will come in the manga and anime and such, so sorry if I do get it wrong. As he pulls out the sword he's carried with him since he was a kid, revealing its black blade. And then explaining that black blades aren't forged from in a blacksmith shop or anything like that. They're actually forged in battle. Eventually, the sword that he carried just became black. Then Asta asked the question of something that he noticed while he was using this one of his master's sword, the Numa sword, asking what exactly was that thing I felt when I used this sword. It felt like it was starting to put pressure on me and my haki. Zoro explained that that sword is very unique. And if it wasn't for that sword, his training wouldn't have gone as quickly, he guessed, in his performing haki in the way of Ryu that he's trying to teach them. Then Yuno stated, so wait, basically any sword can become a black blade like that over time in battles using haki, right? Zoro just shook his head, agreeing with what Yuno said. With Asta just being stoked, saying, that's awesome! Though it kind of felt like it was starting to overtake me a little bit. I don't think I could use this sword in long-term fights. Or so maybe about a couple of minutes I can use it, at least for now. Then Zoro tells them that since they're young and training in this, it might take a while. Zoro had some time when he was much older than them to train in this, so it might take a bit longer for them to completely master it. So they just start training. They start flowing the armament haki through their bodies when he noticed something. The color they were emitting reminded him kind of what his captain did, a kind of golden color, though they both had a different tinge to it. Asta had a red one, while Yuno had a green tinge to it. He figured that this might be related to something, though kept quiet about it for now. Uh, so we move on to the about a month of training, in which time, every time they messed up on the technique, Zoro would take a stick and smack him in the head. They weren't as good at observation haki as Zoro, so obviously they couldn't dodge. Which really sucked for them. Even going to the point to where they're just lying on the ground and you see Yuno with an aggravated face and he's just grumbling saying, I am going to murder him. And Luffy's just laughing saying, you know, the only time you really show any anger is when you're frustrated with Master's lessons. As then he goes back to a blank face like in canon. After the month, Zoro stated that from here on you'll train in it on your own. Sink or swim, you two. Got it? As they bowed to Zoro and left, they oddly forgot that they were in the middle of the woods. And instantly they had to go back to show Zoro the way back to the village. Because he was already about half the way there to get into the neutral zone that's filled with strong magic regions. So after that, Asta and split to do their training. Things happen somewhat similar in canon for Asta meeting the magic swordsman from the Diamond Kingdom, who taught him a little bit about how to fight in magic swordplay. He did get some stuff from it and was grateful. As for wanting to be as strong as Zoro is, ended up developing a spell. Of course, he wasn't really fond of the whole three sword thing, but did work quite well in dual wielding. While training, he actually developed a spell, similar to the one that you see him making canon later on in the Black Castle, but not as big of a sword, more katana shaped. Basically, wind magic dual katanas. And he also finds out that he can emit haki to them as well. They still train in Ryu, though it seems to be a bit easier for who has magic and understands a certain flow of power, similar to his mana. However, Asta doesn't really relate that much, so it's a bit more difficult for him. Time passes, and they get to the point to where they have to leave. And they do and obviously end up racing there, even using the technique moonwalk or skywalk, whichever one you want to keep it as. I think I'm just gonna call it skywalk. They do get there, and when they do, they look around, have a little fun since they got there a bit early, and are enjoying themselves. And once the exam starts to begin, they hurry up and enter. As they walk through the little tunnel thing inside the hallway and such, Asta looked at and asked if he wanted to borrow one of the swords their master gave him. Just looked at him, stating, "No thanks. For one, that one sword that seems to enforce armament haki sounds like a bit of a pain to use. Also, I'd rather not take a cursed sword that has a reputation of killing its users unless they have ridiculous luck like you and Master." As Scissors kind of scratches his head laughing nervously. "Oh yeah, I forgot about that, huh?" Once they get in there, same thing happens with the birds. Unlike in canon though, when Asta's about to bump into Yami, he moves around him instead, avoiding bumping into him. Yami takes notice of this, trying to grab his head, which he is failing at, since Asta can basically tell where his hand's gonna be grabbing at him and when, he's able to dodge pretty easily. Which, before Yami starts to draw his sword to try to kill him, he noticed that Asta has two katanas at his side. Though before he can ask anything, Finro shows up and tells Yami that he shouldn't be messing with the entrance examinees. Which, obviously, then the exam is announced to be starting, so Yami left to go sit down with the other captains. So the first test begins. Still does his normal thing. As for Asta, he uses a skywalk to push off of air, just bouncing around all over the place in midair. They're surprised by this, thinking he has some kind of wind magic, and thinking that it is a very unusual method of flight that they haven't seen before. He does pass this one. As for the creation one, not so much. But then comes the target practice one. Uh, still does the same thing with magic. As for Asta, he resorts to a Tempest kick, slicing one of the targets clean in half, even going to slice some of the Colosseum, which he is kind of nervous about getting in trouble, but luckily that can, I would assume that could be easily fixed with magic, so he doesn't get into any trouble. Now then, as you've probably been thinking, if Yuno was trained by Zoro too, how would this change the fight that he had? Well, he still fights the same guy, but instead of making that hurricane, he makes dual wind blades, covering them with haki. In this state, he calls them Dark Tempest blades. As the same noble that's all cocky shoots a gigantic lightning ball at him, instantly Yuno's able to create a slice that goes clean through his spell, dispersing it from the sheer force behind it. Not just from the regular slash, but from wind magic backing it up. After that, the wind blades allow him to just cut clean through air, which, if you don't know how I'm making this, basically the wind goes around him instead of holding him back, so he can go pretty fast, blitzing straight towards the mage, doing an X cut across his torso, though careful not to make it too deep to where it could kill him. He ends up falling down, collapsing from the sheer shock and pain of it. Though it's not lethal, so he'll survive. But getting cut like that, it would still hurt like hell. Asta smirking, just glad that his rival has gotten so good since their separate training. Now we head to Asta, who in this one is fighting a steel magic mage. He's a member of nobility, obviously, and acting cocky the same as the other guy. When they start the fight, he instantly makes a whole bunch of steel golems to attack. Also first draws the curse blade, putting it in his mouth, covered in haki. Pulling out his demon slayer sword, doing the same, covering it with haki. Waiting for a moment for them to get closer to draw out Unami. If I'm saying that name right, I hope I am, and I got the right sword name. I do hope I do. Either way, he draws it out and does a Tatsumaki. I believe the name is correct. Basically, the Twister Dragon attack, sending all of the golems upward, slicing them to bits, destroying them outright. After that, he sees the Unami and puts away the Demon Slayer sword, taking his first katana sword, which I do somewhat forget the name. I'm sorry, I will look it up and mention it later. But he takes the sleeve out of the sash he's holding it in, and holds it in what I believe One Piece fans would very much remember this pose, as he kneels down a bit and holds the sheath of the sword in one hand, while the sword handle with the sword sheathed into it is held in the other hand, as the noble is getting pissed and creates a giant iron armor to attack. He goes straight at him, but in a flash, the armor is cut clean through, cutting him in a similar way that Yuno did to the mage he went up against, causing him enough of a shock to force the spell to disperse, falling on just falling directly to the ground. Saying, obviously, Asta after this would say Lion's Gate. Hopefully, I got that name of the technique right. I do hope. There is a lot of techniques I looked up for the three sword style, including the two sword and one sword form Zoro uses. After that, the Magic Knight captains were impressed with what he just did. Not only did he take out all those golems with a spiraling black gust, a spiraling black dragon that he made, which you can see in the thumbnail right there, but he also took out a noble using an incredibly powerful armored steel magic armor mat spell, sliced clean through it, cut him enough not to kill him, but to put him in enough shock and pain to for him to pass out and the spell to disperse. And Yami is just pumped to have someone who seems to be so good at using a katana right here in front of him. So time passes, everybody else does their combat exam, and we get to the part where selections are made. Yuno still does the same as in canon, going with the Golden Dawn. And when he picks the Golden Dawn, Captain the captain of the Golden Dawn, Captain Vengeance, smirks a good bit, being happy that he got Yuno. As for Asta, he does get hands from the Black Bulls, the Green Praying Mantises, surprisingly the Silver Eagles, since Nozel is somewhat curious about how he was able to do that since he can't sense any magic from him, and the Crimson Lion Kings. He looks around, and he noticed this before from Yami, that he had a katana as well, wondering if he might have known his master, or if he has any of the same skills as his master. So he decides to pick the Black Bulls. Once he was asked by Phlegonion about why he would choose the Black Bulls, he just responded with, well, it looks like that Black Bull's captain has a similar weapon that my master taught me to use. So, yes, you can say I'm just going on instinct or something. Hope it's gonna work out. Yami's surprised by this. And after that, they obviously go through Finra Portal to go get to the Black Bull's hideout. But before they walk in, Yami did ask for them to wait a little bit as Yami asked Asta about his master he mentioned. Asta asked if he knew his master Zoro. Yami said he didn't, but was still curious as Asta went on describing him and how powerful he was, able to slice through a boulder cleanly with enough sheer force that didn't even need magic. He never heard of that, so he asked if Asa can show him. he was okay with it and drew the curse sword. Instantly, he sliced, creating a wind pressure slice that cut down a bunch of trees. Yami noticed it. There was no magic in that attack. As he states, "Are you serious? That wasn't. You didn't even have any magic in there. Are you telling me that was just sheer force that created that wind slash? What about the thing you did with your feet during the target part of the exam?" Asta just smirked, saying, "Oh, well, that was the Tempest kick. It's a technique that uses your feet similar to a blade." And then Yami had to ask one more question. "Why did you have one of the swords in your mouth?" As Asa replied with, "Oh, that's actually the style my master taught me. It's called three sword style. You know, actually learned from Master Zoro too, but he didn't actually go with the three sword style. He just went with dual wielding, as he remembered that kid from the exam." Then he asked his last question. "What was that black stuff that coated both of your arms and weapons?" Asta kind of scratched his head, asking, "Wait, you don't know about it? It's called haki. Our teacher stated that it was something like an energy inside you separate from magic, and that if you use it right, it has three stages, one of which you have to be born with. I don't know if I have that one or not, neither does Yuno, but we do both have the other kind, observation and armament. You saw the armament when our hands and our weapons turned black, but observation is how I was able to keep you from grabbing me by the head. It's kind of like an ability that lets you know when and where you're being attacked, like which direction the attack's coming from and when and where it will hit you." Which he's genuinely surprised that there's something like that out there. As they walked over, there was just one more thing that Yami couldn't bring himself not to ask. "How strong is your master?" Asa just states, "Not sure. He taught me a lot of things. But honestly, out of everything he taught me, I'd still probably lose. Strength wise, he could probably cut a mountain in half." Which, if you've seen One Piece, that is not an understatement. That is not an understatement. So, like in canon, Asta opens the door and a fireball does still go at him, but he's able to dodge it without being blown away. Afterwards, Yami yells at everybody to calm down, and when they do, Asta is introduced to the Black Bulls and vice versa for them. As for the workouts Asta has to do, they're a lot easier. And when it comes to the headbutt to the boulder, he covers his forehead in armament haki, slams it into it, frickin' splits the boulder instantly, which just has Magna's jaw drop. After that comes the fighting portion where Magna starts to throw multiple fireballs at Asta. Asta isn't able to hold it for long, but he is able to hold it long enough to withstand this short barrage of fireballs, creating an invisible wall of armament haki, straining at it a little bit. So Yami can definitely see that he's having a hard time with it. Once Magna stops with the barrage, Asta puts his hand down, breathing heavily. because he's really not used to using haki like this. Magna says, "That was great. So now, use your grimoire," as he fires up his final attack. He pulls out his anti-magic sword, and it goes straight for Asta. Like in canon, he still ricochets it, being the first time he ever noticed that it could do that, sending the fireball directly back at Magna. Magna's still pumped, especially whenever he finds out that Asta doesn't have any magic. He gets his Black Bull's robe and the Black Bull's mark on his headband, as well as a silvered-haired girl looking from up top of the Black Bull's hideout, on everybody just having some fun and laughs with Asta. So, that is the end. Well, we'll be ending part 2 of What If Asta Was Trained by Zoro. Hope you enjoyed. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Also remember to hit that bell and to make sure you're notified. One more thing. If I didn't say in the beginning, there is a bit of a strong storm coming my way to where I live. So you'll just have to wait and see how that goes, and in case I'm not able to upload for a bit. Well, probably shouldn't be anything serious, just maybe a power outage for a while. So, see you later.